What is up, guys? So something that we talk about often on this paintball channel is output pressure on tank regulators and regulators in general. I think a lot of you guys are just kind of winging it and guessing when we're talking about tank output pressure. But whenever I mention it, whenever I'm like, this is the correct pressure for a gun, or I want to use this pressure on a gun, I actually hook it up to a gauge and test the output pressure. So how do you do that? How do you build a tester? And what's all involved? Let's talk about that. So if you want to know more info about why you actually want to know tank output pressure, hit that eye up there, that info card. Some links will come up, and check out those videos. I put a couple in there that we discussed, or I discussed, why tank output pressure is important. So the easiest way to check output pressure on a regulator is going to be getting an old on-off ASA. So I have a CP on-off that's just kind of laying around that I grabbed and we're using for demonstration purposes in this video. And then really you just put a gauge onto the side of the on-off, and then you can screw on a tank and then check the output pressure. It's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. What I like to do to have a little bit more versatility though is put a male Foster fitting onto that on-off, and then female Foster fittings on a variety of gauges so that I can get a better and more accurate reading of pressures. So I like to use 3 different size gauges. Right now for this demo purposes, we have this 4,000 PSI gauge, a 1,200 PSI gauge, and then a 300 PSI gauge. So what I like to do first is use that really high pressure one so that if the tank output pressure is 1,500 or something really high, I don't spin out that gauge and then stretch the gauge on that middle pressure 1,200 one. So first, to check that pressure is not super high like 1,500, I just put on the big gauge and then just double check and make sure it will fit inside that 1,200 PSI for that middle-sized gauge. And then you just pop off that big 4,000 gauge and then put on the 1,200, and then you can get an accurate reading of tank output pressure. It's also important to note that these gauges are going to be more accurate when they're right in the center. So if the gauge goes all the way to 800, you're going to be stretching that gauge out, and then it's not reading in the center. So that's kind of why I like this 1,200 gauge, because it's putting that 500 to 1,000 PSI somewhere in the center, so you're not stretching the gauge all the way out. And then I kind of do that same thing to test inline rigs. I put a big gauge on just to make sure that I'm not going to spin out a regulator, and then pop that off, and then put on a smaller gauge to, check pressure. So that's kind of the gist of it. It's really not that difficult. I think most people might not actually put those Foster fittings on gauges and the on-off, but I like that. I like how it makes it more versatile, and I can put different gauges on to get more accurate readings. If you want, check out some links in the description. I'll link out to a couple things like different gauges, different Foster fittings, maybe an on-off, to get you guys started on building your own reg tester. Little announcement. So tomorrow you typically see paintball question time. You're not going to see it tomorrow. There's not going to be a video tomorrow. I leave to World Cup that day and then have heaps of stuff I need to do before I can go. So this will be not the last video of the week, but no paintball question time. Look for probably stuff on Thursday and Friday when I'll be at World Cup making videos for you guys. So to check out more of these tip video things or whatever, hit that big rectangular box. It'll go to a video about what tools to use to fix your paintball gun. Check out the Paintball Ruin My Life store by hitting that square box and the circle button to subscribe.